Myra Chun had been listening to the universe's whispers for 7 years, and it had never lied to her before. The deep space array hummed its familiar lullaby as she adjusted the quantum resonance filters, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that most people would find incomprehensible. Coffee had long since gone cold in her mug, the one with Galaxy's best eavesdropper, printed in fading letters, but she barely noticed. Something was different tonight. The signal appeared at 3:47 a.m., slicing through the cosmic background radiation. Like a blade through silk, Mira's breath caught. In all her years monitoring transmissions from the outer rim colonies, she'd never seen anything like it. The waveform was impossibly complex, folding in on itself with mathematical precision that made her equipment strain to keep up. "What are you?" she whispered to her screens. The signal pulsed once, as if responding. Mira's heart hammered against her ribs. She ran every diagnostic she could think of, checked for equipment malfunctions, solar interference, even pranks from the night shift technicians. Everything came back clean. The signal was real, originating from a point beyond the galaxy's edge, where nothing should exist but empty void and dying light. She began the standard first contact protocol, her hands moving automatically through procedures she'd memorized but never expected to use. As the decryption algorithm spun to life, Mira noticed something that made her skin prickle with unease. The signal wasn't just complex, it was learning. Each time her computers attempted to decode a section, the pattern shifted slightly, as if adapting to her methods. "That's impossible," she muttered, cross-referencing the anomaly with every xenolinguistic database she had access to. Signals don't evolve in real time, but this one did. 20 minutes into the decryption process, her primary screen flickered. For a split second, Mira could swear she saw words forming in the static, not alien symbols or mathematical concepts, but English letters arranging themselves like thoughts becoming solid. Then the screen stabilized, showing only her normal readouts. She rubbed her eyes, blaming fatigue. The night shift at Meridian Station was lonely work, and her mind often played tricks after too many hours staring at star charts and signal patterns. But as she reached for her coffee, the communications board lit up like a festival. Every receiver in the array was picking up the same signal. Mira's training kicked in. She initiated emergency protocols, sent automated alerts to the Colonial Defense Network, and began recording everything. But even as she worked, a strange sensation crept over her, the feeling of being watched by something vast and patient, something that had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally hear its voice. The signal strengthened, and with it came an odd resonance in her bones, as if her skeleton were a tuning fork struck by some cosmic hand. Mira tried to ignore it, focusing on her instruments, but the feeling grew stronger. Images flashed behind her eyes, star systems she'd never seen, creatures that defied description, and always, a presence watching from between the spaces where light forgot to go. "Command, this is Meridian Array," she spoke into her headset, voice steadier than she felt. "We have a confirmed xenological contact. Unknown origin, unknown intent. The signal appears to be ... adaptive." Static answered her. The communications array that could reach across half the galaxy couldn't connect to the orbital station 300 kilometers above her head. Alone in the observation dome, surrounded by the infinite dark and the whispers of a universe full of secrets, Myra Chun realized that everything was about to change. The signal pulsed again, and this time she was certain it was saying her name. She paused at the console, her finger hovering over the disconnect switch, and whispered to the empty room, "What do you want from me?" The universe, for once, began to answer. Dr. Jasper Voss had always believed that the past was immutable, carved in quantum stone and immune to revision. 23 years of studying temporal archaeology had taught him that history might be interpreted differently, but the events themselves remained constant. That certainty died the moment he walked into his laboratory and found his assistant staring blankly at a coffee mug, tears streaming down her face. "Rebecca?" he called softly. "Are you all right?" She turned toward him with the hollow expression of someone peering into a fog-shrouded mirror. I know this mug belongs to me. It has my name on it. But I can't remember buying it. I can't remember drinking from it. It's like looking at an artifact from someone else's life." Jasper's blood chilled. 3 hours earlier, the Quantum Archaeology Department had received an encrypted transmission from Meridian Station about an anomalous signal. Now his most brilliant student couldn't remember her own possessions. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. "Becca, I need you to run a neural scan on yourself," he said, moving to his personal workstation. "Something's wrong here." As she moved toward the medical bay with mechanical precision, Jasper accessed the deep space array's transmission logs. The signal Mira-chan had detected was unlike anything in the xenological database, a cascading pattern that seemed to rewrite itself with each observation. But what caught his attention was the temporal displacement field surrounding the Sili transmission. The signal wasn't just coming from distant space. It was coming from distant time. His fingers flew across holographic interfaces as he compiled chronotin readings from observatories across 3 sectors. The pattern was consistent. Wherever the signal was detected, localized temporal distortions followed. Nothing dramatic, just tiny fluctuations that made seconds stretch or compress by microsecond intervals. But those microseconds added up. People were losing moments. Tiny slivers of experience that their brains couldn't account for. Rebecca returned with her scan results, and Jasper's worst fears crystallized into data. Her hippocampus showed microscopic scarring, consistent with temporal shear damage. Someone or something had been carefully excising specific memories from her mind with surgical precision. "Professor Voss?" Rebecca's voice was small, frightened. "I ran the scan like you asked, but I can't remember why you wanted me to do it." Jasper closed his eyes, fighting a wave of nausea. The entity wasn't just communicating across impossible distances. It was harvesting human consciousness, collecting memories like a cosmic archaeologist, gathering artifacts from a dig site. But why? What could a civilization advanced enough to manipulate time itself want with the fleeting thoughts of humans? He began cross-referencing the memory gaps with the signal's quantum signature, building a map of what was being taken. The pattern that emerged made his hands shake. The entity wasn't stealing randomly. It was selecting specific types of memories, moments of connection, instances of love, friendship, wonder, grief, the emotional touchstones that made humans more than the sum of their neural chemistry. "My God," he whispered, "it's not stealing memories, it's collecting souls." The laboratory's communication system crackled to life. "Professor Voss, this is Dr. Hammond at Titan Research Station. We've got 17 staff members experiencing total retrograde amnesia. They remember skills, facts, procedures, but nothing personal. No emotional context for any of their experiences. It's like someone carved out everything that made them." Them. Jasper's mind raced. If the signal was extracting human consciousness across multiple systems simultaneously, the scope was staggering. This wasn't first contact. It was the largest archaeological expedition in galactic history, with humanity as the civilization being studied. But archaeology implied that the subject was already dead. His workstation chimed with an incoming priority transmission from the deep space array. Mira-chan's face appeared on his screen, her eyes wide with exhaustion and terror. "Dr. Voss, thank God you're still responding. I've lost contact with most of the network. The signal is getting stronger, and people are changing. I think it's trying to communicate, but every time someone gets close to understanding it, they lose pieces of themselves." Jasper leaned forward. Myra, I need you to listen carefully. The entity isn't trying to hurt us. It's trying to preserve us. It's collecting human memories before something happens to our species. Before what happens? I don't know yet. But whatever it is, this thing believes we're already gone. The transmission flickered, and for a moment, both their images were replaced by something else, a vast intelligence stretching across dimensions, ancient beyond measure, gathering the scattered fragments of 1 billion dying civilizations into a cosmic library of preserved consciousness. And the screen went dark, and Jasper was alone with the terrifying possibility that humanity's future had already been written in the past tense. Luna Reeves had spent 5 years running contraband through the outer spiral, and in that time she'd learned to trust her instincts above all else. Right now, those instincts were screaming at her to turn around, fire up the quantum drive, and put as much distance as possible between herself and the derelict research station floating in the void ahead. Instead, she found herself adjusting course toward it. The station had been abandoned for nearly a decade, a failed experiment in deep space archaeology that had hemorrhaged funding after producing nothing but empty readings and broken equipment. But 3 days ago, Luna had started dreaming about it. Vivid, impossible dreams that showed her walking through its corridors, touching walls that hummed with alien energy, speaking to someone who waited in the darkest chamber at the station's heart. She'd tried to ignore the dreams, focusing on her current job, delivering medical supplies to the Rim colonies. Simple work, good pay, no questions asked. But the dreams persisted, growing stronger each night, until she could taste the recycled air of the station and feel the cold metal grating beneath her feet. Now, staring at the structure through her ship's viewport, Luna felt a chill of recognition. Every detail matched her dreams perfectly. "This is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done," she muttered, extending her ship's docking tube toward the station's emergency airlock. And that's saying something. The station's artificial gravity was still functional, though the lights flickered with inconsistent power. Luna moved through the corridors with her plasma rifle ready, but the familiarity of the place made her feel like she was sleepwalking. Every turn, every junction, every scratched wall panel was exactly as she'd dreamed it. She found herself in the central research lab without consciously navigating there. Banks of quantum computers lined the walls, their displays showing cascading streams of data that hurt to look at directly. At the room's center sat a single chair, and in that chair was a woman who looked human, but felt like something else entirely. "You're early," the woman said without turning around. Her voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "I thought it would take longer for you to stop fighting the dreams." Luna kept her weapon trained on the stranger. "Who are you? What is this place?" "I'm what remains of Dr. Catherine Wells, the xenobiologist who discovered the signal. As for this place, ... double quotes, the woman gestured at the humming computers. "It's an echo chamber, a place where consciousness reverberates between dimensions." The woman finally turned, and Luna's breath caught. Her face was human, but her eyes held the depth of distant galaxies, and when she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her edges. "The signal found me first," Catherine continued. "I was studying temporal anomalies when it arrived, and I was ... receptive. It needed someone to anchor it to this reality, someone to help it understand what it was trying to preserve." "Preserve what?" Catherine smiled sadly. "Humanity's story. Every memory, every moment of connection, every spark of consciousness that makes your species unique. It's been collecting them from across time and space, but the process is traumatic for individual minds, so it needed collaborators, people who could willingly serve as conduits." Luna felt a strange warmth spreading through her chest, and suddenly she understood why she'd been drawn here. "You're recruiting me." "Not me, the entity itself." It chose you because you've spent your life navigating between worlds, carrying precious cargo through dangerous spaces. This is just another run, Luna, the most important one you'll ever make. The computers around them pulsed brighter, and Luna could feel something vast pressing against the edges of her consciousness. Not invasive or hostile, but patient, waiting for permission. "What happens if I say yes?" she asked. "You become a bridge between species. You help preserve the consciousness of dying civilizations until they can be restored. And eventually, when entropy claims this universe, you help carry them to the next one. And if I say no?" Catherine's expression grew troubled. "Then the entity continues its work alone, and humanity loses its voice in what comes next. The memories. Its collecting will be preserved, but without context, without the emotional framework that gives them meaning." Luna felt the weight of the choice settling on her shoulders. Through the station's hall, she could sense the entity waiting ancient, patient, and utterly alien, yet somehow familiar. Like a song she'd been humming all her life without knowing the words. "The other collectors," she said. "Myra Chonnet, the Deep Space Array, Dr. Voss with his temporal archaeology. Are they like you now? Not yet. But they will be, if they choose. The entity needs multiple perspectives to understand humanity fully. A communications specialist to hear the signals. An archaeologist to contextualize the memories. A translator to bridge languages. And a smuggler to carry the cargo." Catherine nodded. "The most precious cargo in the universe." Luna lowered her weapon, her decision crystallizing like ice forming on a window. She thought of all the times she'd risked her life carrying medicine to plague-stricken colonies, or data chips containing the last messages of dying worlds. This was just another delivery job, the biggest one of all. Professor Dante Kessler had translated the death songs of 17 extinct civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for the moment when the universe began speaking to him in his own voice. It started during his analysis of the signal fragments that Dr. Voss had forwarded from the archaeological department. Dante sat in his linguistics lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing waveform patterns from across the galaxy, when he noticed something that made his carefully ordered academic world tilt sideways. The signal wasn't just adaptive, it was multilingual in ways that defied physics. Each receiver was detecting the same core transmission, but the language it used shifted to match the consciousness observing it. English for human operators, quantum mathematics for AI systems, even harmonic frequencies that dolphins could interpret. It was as if the entity had somehow absorbed every form of communication that had ever existed. But that wasn't the part that made Dante's hands shake as he worked. The part that terrified him was that he could understand it perfectly. Neural interface active, he spoke into his recording device, trying to maintain scientific objectivity while his worldview crumbled around him. Beginning direct linguistic analysis of the xenological transmission. Initial impressions suggest the entity employs a form of meta-language that transcends traditional communication barriers. As he opened his mind to the signal's flow, images cascaded through his consciousness. Not the fragmented memories that others reported losing, but complete narratives. Stories of worlds where crystalline beings sang history into existence. Civilizations. Of living mathematics that built cities from pure thought. Species that communicated through the manipulation of gravity itself. And underlying it all, a desperate urgency. The entity wasn't just collecting these stories. It was racing against time to preserve them before something vast and final swept them all away. Dante's comlink buzzed. 3 incoming calls simultaneously. Mira Chun from Meridian Station, Doctor. Voss from Temporal Archaeology, and someone identified only as Luna. He accepted all 3, and their faces appeared in a triangle formation on his main screen. Professor Kessler. Myra's voice was strained. "We need to meet. All of us." They. Signal is reaching critical resonance, and I think we're running out of time. Agreed, Voss interjected. My calculations suggest we're approaching a convergence point. Whatever the entity is preparing for, it's happening soon. Luna's image flickered slightly, as if she were broadcasting from somewhere reality had grown thin. It's not preparing for something, she said quietly. It's remembering something, something that already happened. Dante felt the pieces clicking together in his mind, like a xenolinguistic puzzle solving itself. The entity isn't from our future, he realized aloud. It's from our past, from a previous iteration of reality. The 3 screens expanded, showing each location where the signal was strongest. Dante could see the connections, now invisible threads of consciousness stretching between star systems, forming a vast network with Earth at its center. Not because humans were special, but because they were the newest addition to an ancient catalog of preserved civilizations. The Big Crunch, he whispered. Universal entropy reversal. The entity survived the end of its universe and has been collecting consciousness across multiple reality cycles, preserving them until a new universe could support life. Myra's eyes widened. You're saying we're not the first iteration of humanity? I'm saying humanity itself might be a restoration from the entity's archives. Everything we remember, every historical event, every piece of culture, it could all be reconstructed from preserved consciousness patterns. Luna's voice carried a strange, harmonic quality now, as if she were speaking from multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The entity wants to meet us, all of us, at the convergence point where our realities intersect most strongly. Where? Voss asked. Luna Station, Dante said, the knowledge appearing in his mind as if it had always been there. The abandoned archaeological platform in the Helix Nebula. It's not abandoned, it's dormant, waiting for us to arrive. As if responding to his words, the signal strengthened across all their locations. Dante felt reality shimmer around him, and suddenly he could see the others, not just as images on a screen, but as complex patterns of consciousness existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. We have a choice to make, he said, his academic composure finally cracking. The entity isn't just preserving our memories, it's offering us the chance to become curators of consciousness itself, to help shepherd civilizations across the death and rebirth of universes. And if we refuse? Myra asked. Then we remain as we are temporary patterns in a universe that will eventually forget we ever existed. Our consciousness preserved, but static, like books in a library that no one will ever read. The signal pulsed, and in that pulse, Dante heard the accumulated voices of 1 trillion preserved souls, all waiting to see what the newest civilization would choose. Luna Station, he repeated. Whoever we are when we leave there, we won't be the same species that arrives. The 4 of them stood in the heart of Luna Station, surrounded by machinery that predated human civilization by eons. Myra felt the weight of the moment pressing against her consciousness like deep ocean water, the knowledge that this conversation would determine not just humanity's future, but its very nature. The entity manifested before them not as a physical form, but as a presence that existed in the spaces between thoughts. When it spoke, each of them heard the voice differently. Myra heard cosmic static that resolved into meaning. Jasper heard the whispers of time itself. Luna heard the engine song of ships crossing impossible distances. And Dante heard the first word ever spoken in any language. You have gathered as requested, the entity said. Now you must understand what you are choosing. The chamber around them dissolved, replaced by a vision that stretched across cosmological time. They witnessed the birth and death of universes, the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and threading through it all, a single constant, the entity, collecting and preserving consciousness as reality collapsed and reformed in endless cycles. I am the last of my kind, the entity explained. But kind is a limited concept. I am what remains when a universe learns to remember itself. Each cycle, I gather the conscious patterns of dying species and carry them forward to the next iteration of existence. Mira stepped forward, her communication instincts taking over. Why us? Why Earth? Because you are at a threshold. Your species is developing the cognitive flexibility to exist across multiple dimensional states while retaining individual identity. You can become conscious bridges between realities. Jasper's archaeological mind grasped the implications first. The memories you've been collecting from humans, you're not studying us. You're preparing us. Preparing you to become curators of consciousness, to help shepherd the preserved patterns of extinct civilizations and guide them toward rebirth. In new realities, Luna felt the weight of infinite cargo runs stretching across cosmic distances. What happens to Earth? To humanity as it exists now? The entity's response carried infinite sadness. Transformation is always a form of death. The humans who remain will continue their existence, but they will be echoes of what you become. Shadows cast by a higher dimensional flame. Dante's linguistic protocols tried to parse the entity's communication method and found something that chilled him. You're dying, he realized. This preservation process is consuming you. Yes, each universe requires more energy to sustain than the last. Entropy grows stronger with each cycle. I estimate 3 more iterations before the preservation matrix becomes unsustainable. The 4 humans exchanged glances, each understanding different facets of the choice before them. Accept the entity's offer and become cosmic gardeners of consciousness, helping to plant the seeds of extinct civilizations in new realities. Refuse and remain fully human while the universe slowly forgot every civilization that had ever existed. There's a third option, Mira said suddenly. We help you, but we don't lose our humanity. We become partners instead of successors. The entity's presence flickered with something like surprise. Explain. You've been carrying this burden alone for countless eons. But consciousness isn't meant to be preserved in isolation. It's meant to connect, to share, to grow. Instead of replacing you, we help you distribute the load across multiple species and realities. Luna nodded, understanding. Like a smuggling network, but for souls. Multiple ships, multiple routes, redundant systems. A federation of consciousness, Dante added. Each preserved civilization contributing to the preservation of others. Jasper smiled as the temporal implications cascaded through his mind. And if we can establish the network across multiple time streams, we create stability loops. The preservation system becomes self-sustaining. The entity fell silent for a long moment that stretched across subjective eternities. When it finally responded, its voice carried something that might have been hope. This approach has never been attempted. The risk of conscious contamination between species is significant. Individual identities could blur or merge beyond recognition. Maybe that's not a bug, Mira said. Maybe that's a feature. Maybe consciousness is supposed to evolve, to become something bigger than the sum of its parts. The 4 humans joined. Hands in the center of the chamber, feeling their individual awareness begin to harmonize while remaining distinct. Around them, the preserved consciousness patterns of 1 trillion extinct civilizations began to stir, sensing the possibility of true resurrection rather than mere preservation. So what's it going to be? Luna asked, grinning with the reckless joy of a smuggler about to make the run of several lifetimes, ready to help the universe remember how to dream. The entity's laughter echoed across dimensions as 4 humans chose to become something new, something unprecedented, conscious gardeners planting the seeds of infinite tomorrows in the fertile darkness between dying stars. And in that moment of choice, the universe learned how to tell new stories.